It hangs in the velvet darkness of our night, a constant, silent companion. For all of human history, it has been our sentinel, our calendar, our muse. We have gazed upon its serene face, charting its phases, weaving its light into our myths, our religions, and our oldest stories. It is the moon, an object so familiar, we feel we know it as well as we know the back of our own hand. But this familiarity is a grand illusion. The glowing orb that has guided travelers and inspired poets is a mask. Behind its placid, silvered facade lies a profound and unsettling truth, a story of cataclysmic violence, of cosmic asymmetries, and of a deep, dark secret that we are only now beginning to comprehend. This celestial body, our closest neighbor, is a stranger, and the story it has to tell is not one of peace, but of a brutal, lopsided past that challenges our most fundamental understanding of how worlds are born. The story begins not in the cold expanse of space, but here, on Earth, with our first tentative steps toward the heavens. For millennia, humanity saw only one face of the moon. Locked in a perfect tidal embrace, it pirouettes in sync with its journey around our planet, eternally showing us a single hemisphere. This face became the geography of our dreams. We saw a man in its features, a rabbit, a woman reading a book. The dark patches we named Maria, the Latin word for seas, imagining vast, still oceans under the light of a distant Earth. Even when Galileo Galilei first turned his primitive telescope toward it in 1609, shattering the illusion of a perfect celestial sphere and revealing mountains and craters, he was still only looking at one half of the puzzle. For centuries, the other side remained the greatest unsolved mystery in our backyard. What lay on the far side of the moon? Was it a mirror image of the near side, a desolate, cratered wasteland? Or perhaps, as science fiction writers dreamed, it held the secret cities of an alien civilization hidden forever from our prying eyes? The question lingered, a tantalizing whisper in the minds of astronomers, until October 7th, 1959. On that day, the Soviet probe Lunar 3 swung around the moon's distant limb, its rudimentary camera system capturing the very first, grainy, ghost-like images of the hemisphere no human had ever seen. The transmission was poor, the pictures were blurry, but the revelation was instantaneous and shocking. The far side was not like the near side at all. It was a different world. The familiar, dark seas of basaltic lava that paint the face of the man in the moon were almost entirely absent. In their place was a relentless, brutal landscape, an endless sea of craters, overlapping, piled one upon the other, testament to billions of years of cosmic bombardment. It was brighter, more rugged, more ancient. It was alien. This was the first hint of the moon's great secret, a profound and inexplicable duality. Why would one hemisphere of a spherical world be so dramatically different from the other? The answer is not a simple one. It is a detective story written across 5 billion years, a tale that begins with an act of unimaginable violence. Our solar system, in its infancy, was a chaotic, dangerous place, a cosmic shooting gallery of planetary embryos, dust and debris. A young, molten Earth was tracing its path around the Sun when it was met with catastrophe. An object, roughly the size of Mars, which scientists have named Theia, collided with our world in a glancing, world-shattering blow. The energy released is beyond any human scale of comprehension. The surfaces of both planets were vaporized, transformed into incandescent rock gas. A colossal plume of molten material was blasted into orbit around the wounded Earth. For thousands of years, our planet would have been adorned with a glowing, fiery ring, a far more brilliant spectacle than the rings of Saturn. Gravity, the great sculptor of the cosmos, went to work. Slowly, relentlessly, the particles in this ring began to clump together. Dust became pebbles, pebbles became boulders, boulders became mountains. Over a timescale perhaps as short as a few decades or a century, this debris coalesced to form a new, smaller sphere of molten rock. Our moon was born, a child of violence, forged from the very fabric of the early Earth. This a dramatic and widely accepted theory, but it only sets the stage for our central mystery. It explains the moon's existence, but it does not explain its bizarre dual personality. For that, we must imagine the scene just after the moon's formation. A glowing, red-hot Earth and its new, smaller, but also molten companion. Because the moon was so close, it quickly became tidally locked. One side was perpetually turned toward the inferno of the young Earth, while the other faced the freezing void of deep space. This is where one of the most compelling theories takes root. The near side, bathed in the radiant heat of an Earth that was still thousands of degrees Celsius, would have stayed molten for much longer. It was like an object held perilously close to a colossal cosmic furnace. Its crust remained thin, soft, and pliable. The far side, however, turned its back to this furnace. Staring into the cold abyss, it radiated its primordial heat away much more quickly. Its crust grew thicker, cooler, and more rigid, far sooner than the near side. This difference in cooling rates, this thermal imbalance created by the Earth itself, would set the stage for the great dichotomy we see today. For hundreds of millions of years, the entire solar system was subject to a period of intense violence, known as the Late Heavy Bombardment. Asteroids and comets, the leftover debris from planetary formation, rained down on every world in a relentless storm. The moon, with no atmosphere to protect it, took the brunt of this assault. Both the near side and the far side were battered equally, but how they responded to these impacts was profoundly different. When a large asteroid struck the cooler, thicker crust of the far side, it created a crater, but the crust was too robust to fully rupture. The impact left a scar, but the deep mantle of molten rock remained sealed beneath. But when an object of similar size slammed into the hotter, thinner crust of the near side, the story was utterly transformed. The impact didn't just gouge out a crater, it shattered the fragile lithosphere. It created deep fissures reaching down into the moon's still molten heart. Through these cracks, immense oceans of dark, basaltic lava from the mantle welled up. For millions of years, this lunar magma bled out onto the surface, flooding the great impact basins, drowning the older craters, and solidifying into the vast, smooth, dark plains we call the Maria. The man in the moon is not a feature of the surface. It is a feature of its hidden depths. It is a wound that healed with dark, volcanic blood. This theory of Earth's radiant heat creating a geological schism is elegant and powerful. It paints a picture of our own planet actively shaping the face of its companion, unintentionally sculpting the very features that would later define our myths. But in science, a single elegant theory is rarely the end of the story. And some scientists believe something even more dramatic, more bizarre, occurred. They propose that the moon's dark secret isn't just about heat, but about a long-lost sibling. What if the great impact that formed our moon did not create a single body? What if the debris from that collision coalesced into two moons, not one? One large moon, the one we know today, and a second, much smaller companion, perhaps only a third of the diameter, trapped in a stable orbital point around the Earth-Moon system. For tens of millions of years, our planet would have had two celestial attendants, a grand, primary moon and its diminutive Trojan partner. But no orbit is stable forever. Eventually, the complex gravitational dance would have faltered. The smaller moon would have been nudged from its stable point, beginning a slow, inexorable spiral inward. This would not have been a high-speed, explosive impact like the ones that create craters. Instead, it would have been a cosmic pancake, a collision at a relatively slow speed, perhaps just a few kilometers per second. The smaller moon would have essentially gone splat against the larger one. Imagine two balls of soft clay, one large, one small. If you throw the small one at the large one with great speed, it creates a crater. But if you just gently push them together, the smaller ball flattens out, spreading its material across the surface of the larger one. This is what this theory proposes. The second, smaller moon slowly and gently pancaked itself onto one hemisphere of our primary moon. Its material, spread out over a vast area, would have created a new, much thicker crust. A crust composed of the remains of an entire world. This would perfectly explain the highlands of the far side, the stark difference in crustal thickness, and why it seems to be geologically distinct. The rugged, alien landscape of the far side might not just be ancient terrain, it could be the graveyard of Earth's second moon. The secret, then, would be that our moon is not one world, but two, fused together in a primordial, gentle collision. This idea remains a subject of intense debate, a fascinating but unproven hypothesis. But the anomalies of the moon do not stop at its surface. They extend deep into its core, presenting mysteries that continue to confound the scientists who study our celestial neighbour. During the Apollo missions, as the command modules orbited the moon, the astronauts and mission control noticed something deeply unsettling. The spacecraft would inexplicably dip and accelerate as they passed over certain regions. Their carefully calculated orbits were being distorted by an unseen force. This phenomenon was caused by what are now called mascons, or mass concentrations. These are vast regions beneath the lunar surface, where the gravitational pull is significantly higher. They are buried deep beneath the centers of the largest circular maria, the very basins, that were flooded with lava. What are they? The leading theory is that they are the metallic, dense cores of the giant asteroids that created those basins in the first place. When these colossal impactors struck the moon, their momentum was so great that their dense, iron-rich hearts plunged deep into the lunar mantle, like a bullet fired into mud. While the lighter silicate rock of the asteroid vaporized or melted, these dense cores remained, sinking into the soft, hot interior. Later, as lava filled the basins above, these buried masses of metal created a gravitational anomaly, a hidden structure that tugs on anything that passes over it. The ghosts of ancient, world-killing asteroids are still buried there, their immense density silently shaping the gravitational field of the moon. Navigating around these mascons was one of the great computational challenges of the Apollo program. Fail to account for them, and your trajectory could be altered enough to miss your landing site. Or, even worse, impact the surface. We were discovering, in real time, that the moon was not the simple, homogeneous ball of rock we had assumed. It was lumpy, heterogeneous, and gravitationally complex. It had secrets in its depths. And none of these secrets is more profound, more vast, or more perplexing than what lies beneath the largest impact basin in the entire solar system, the South Pole Aitken Basin. It is located on the far side, an immense feature stretching 2,500 kilometers across and plunging 13 kilometers deep. It is a scar of almost unimaginable scale, formed by an impact so violent it must have nearly shattered the moon to its core. We have long known of its existence, but recent data from NASA's Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory, or GRAIL, mission has revealed something astonishing buried beneath it. The twin GRAIL spacecraft, named Ebb and Flow, chased each other in a precise orbit around the moon, measuring the minute changes in distance between them caused by gravitational variations below. As they passed over the South Pole Aitken Basin, they detected something enormous. A gargantuan mass of material hundreds of kilometers wide, buried deep within the lunar mantle. This anomaly has a mass that defies easy explanation. It is estimated to be at least 2.18 quintillion kilograms. That's 2.18 with 18 zeros after it. It is a structure 5 times larger than the big island of Hawaii, and it is inexplicably dense. What on a cosmic scale could it be? Scientists are scrambling to model the possibilities. One leading hypothesis is that it is, once again, the metallic core of the impactor that created the basin. But to account for such a massive anomaly, the asteroid would have had to be colossal, and it would have had to lodge itself in the mantle without sinking all the way to the moon's core. This presents a series of difficult physics problems. Another, more exotic possibility is that the anomaly is not from an external object at all. It could be a remnant of the moon's own formation. When the moon was a globe-spanning ocean of magma, the densest minerals, like ilmenite, which is rich in titanium and iron, would have crystallized and sunk. Perhaps the South Pole Aitken Basin is where the last dregs of this primordial magma ocean finally solidified, leaving behind a massive concentration of these heavy oxides. If this is true, then this strange mass isn't an intruder. It's part of the moon's fundamental anatomy, a piece of its original, fiery birth. Regardless of its origin, its existence is a game changer. This single, gigantic structure deep beneath the far side could be influencing the moon's tilt, its wobble, and its long-term evolution. It is a secret kept in total darkness, miles beneath the most heavily cratered terrain in our solar system, a feature so massive it warps the very fabric of the moon around it. The dark secret is not just that the moon has two faces, but that beneath one of them lies a buried object of planetary proportions, whose true nature remains a complete enigma. The moon's hidden life extends beyond its geology and its deep interior. For centuries, even before the advent of powerful telescopes, observers have reported strange, fleeting, and mysterious events on the lunar surface. They are known as transient lunar phenomena, or TLP. These are short-lived flashes of light, localized patches of reddish glow, or hazy mists that appear and disappear without warning. In 1787, the great astronomer Sir William Herschel, discoverer of Uranus, recorded observing what he described as 3 volcanoes in eruption on the moon. Many other respected astronomers throughout history have documented similar sightings, brief, inexplicable bright spots that defy easy classification. For a long time, these reports were dismissed by the mainstream scientific community as observational errors, tricks of the light, or meteors striking the surface. A geologically dead world like the moon, it was argued, shouldn't be doing anything. But the evidence has continued to mount. Even Apollo astronauts reported seeing strange glows. During the Apollo 11 mission, as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin worked on the surface, Mission Control radioed them about a report from astronomers in Germany who had observed a bright spot, a possible TLP, in the crater Aristarchus. The astronauts confirmed they could see the area and noted it was considerably more illuminated than the surrounding area. What could be causing these phenomena? One leading theory is outgassing. The moon is not entirely inert. Deep beneath the surface, there may be trapped pockets of primordial gas, like radon, which are occasionally released through deep fissures in the crust. When this gas reaches the surface, it can be ionized by the solar wind and ultraviolet radiation, causing it to glow faintly for a few minutes or hours. The dust on the lunar surface could also be electrostatically levitated by the flow of charged particles, creating a temporary, hazy patch. Another possibility is that we are simply witnessing the ongoing bombardment that the moon endures. The flash of a meteoroid impact, while small, could be visible from Earth, but some of the observed phenomena seem to last too long or cover too wide an area to be simple impact flashes. The secret here is that the moon is not as dead as we once believed. It breathes, it flashes, it shifts. It is an active world in subtle ways we are just beginning to appreciate. Its silence is punctuated by whispers of ongoing geological and electrical activity, a faint pulse from a world we long presumed had none. And perhaps the greatest secret, the one with the most profound implications for the future of humanity, was hidden not in the moon's geology, but in its darkness. In the deepest craters at the lunar poles, there are regions that have not seen direct sunlight for over 2 billion years. These are some of the coldest places in the entire solar system, colder even than the surface of Pluto. Temperatures here plummet to minus 250 degrees Celsius. It was theorized for decades that these permanently shadowed regions could be cold traps, places where volatile compounds, like water, could accumulate over eons and remain frozen forever. For years, this was just a theory. The moon was the archetypal symbol of dryness, of desolation. The 6 Apollo missions brought back 382 kilograms of lunar rock and soil, and initial analyses found them to be almost completely devoid of water. The idea of a wet moon seemed like a fantasy, but then came a series of missions that changed everything. In 1998, The Lunar Prospector probe detected tantalizing hints of hydrogen, a key component of water, concentrated at the poles. The evidence was indirect, but it was compelling. The definitive proof came in 2009. NASA's Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing Satellite, or LCROSS mission, was designed for a dramatic, conclusive experiment. The mission's upper stage rocket was deliberately slammed into the crater Cabeus, near the South Pole. A second spacecraft flew through the plume of debris that was blasted into the sunlight, analyzing its chemical composition before making its own impact. The results were unambiguous and revolutionary. The plume contained significant amounts of water vapor and ice, not just trace amounts, but vast deposits. Subsequent missions, like India's Chandrayaan-1 and NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, have confirmed these findings. There are hundreds of billions of tons of water ice locked away in the polar shadows. This discovery is arguably the most important secret the Moon has ever revealed. Water is the key to humanity's future in space. It is not just for drinking. Using solar energy, it can be split into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen for breathing, hydrogen and oxygen for powerful, efficient rocket fuel. The Moon is not just a desolate rock, it is a gas station in the sky. It holds the resources needed to build and sustain a permanent human presence off Earth and to refuel missions destined for Mars and beyond. The secret hidden in the eternal darkness of the lunar poles has transformed our celestial companion from a destination into a critical stepping stone to the rest of the solar system. This is why humanity is now racing to return. The Artemis program and the missions planned by nations across the globe are not a repeat of Apollo. They are not about flags and footprints. They are about solving these deep mysteries and harnessing these newfound resources. Future astronauts will be geologists, mining engineers, and physicists. They will land at the South Pole, venturing into the shadowed craters to drill into the ancient ice. They will set up seismometers on the far side to probe the Great Anomaly, buried beneath the South Pole Aitken Basin. They will analyze the soil for clues about the Earth's second moon and the history of the late heavy bombardment. The Moon, it turns out, is the ultimate historical archive. Here on Earth, the history of our planet's first billion years has been almost entirely erased, wiped clean by plate tectonics, by wind, by water, by life itself. But the Moon has no such geological recycling. Its surface is a pristine record of 4.5 billion years of solar system history. The craters are the paragraphs, the dust is the punctuation. Every rock tells a story of the cosmic environment in which life on Earth arose. The secret the Moon holds is not just its own history, it is our history too. It contains the lost opening chapters to the story of our own planet, preserved in perfect vacuum, just a 3-day journey away. So we look up at that familiar silver orb, and we see it now with new eyes. We see not a simple, serene companion, but a complex and fractured world. A world with two faces, born of a planetary collision. A world whose near side was cooked by the fires of a young Earth. A world that may have absorbed its own smaller twin. A world with the ghosts of asteroids buried in its belly, and a colossal, unknown mass distorting its very shape. A world that flashes and glows with a faint, hidden life. A world that holds the water and the fuel for our future. The dark secret of the Moon is that we never knew it at all. Our lifelong neighbour has remained a stranger, its true nature concealed, behind a veil of gravity, distance, and eternal darkness. It is a reminder that in the cosmos, familiarity is no guarantee of understanding, and that the greatest mysteries, the most profound revelations, are often not found in the distant galaxies, but in the places we thought we knew best. The Moon is waiting. Its secrets are patient, and as we prepare to return, we go not as conquerors, but as humble detectives, finally ready to read the 5 billion year old story written across the face of our silent, enigmatic, and forever mysterious companion. Is there a feeling more universal, more deeply etched into the human soul than tilting your head back on a clear night and getting lost in the silent glow of the moon. It is a shared inheritance, a celestial birthright gifted to every human who has ever lived, from the first of our ancestors who walked the plains of Africa to the child of today gazing out a bedroom window. It has been the metronome of our nights, the keeper of our calendars, the silent confidant to poets and lovers, scientists and dreamers. Before we had language to name it, we knew it. Before we had gods, we worshipped it. It is more than a rock in space. It is a piece of our collective identity, an object so profoundly familiar that its presence is woven into the very fabric of our consciousness, as elemental as the drawing of a breath. We have charted our oceans by its light, planted our crops by its phases, and measured the passage of our lives by its tireless journey across the starry expanse. It is the protagonist in our oldest myths, and the destination of our boldest ambitions. For millennia, we saw in its mottled face a man, a rabbit, a goddess, a reflection of our own hopes and fears projected onto a cosmic canvas. We saw Selene driving her silver chariot across the heavens, her light a gentle caress upon the sleeping world. We saw Thoth, the Egyptian scribe, marking the passage of time with his crescent-shaped instrument. We saw Chandra, the Hindu deity, pulling the tides and nurturing life with his cool, divine nectar. This celestial body was never just an object. It was a character in our unfolding story, a personality in the grand theatre of the night. Its cycle of waxing and waning, of birth, death and rebirth, taught us about time itself, giving us our first and most fundamental unit of measure beyond the day, the month. The moon's rhythm became our rhythm, a dependable, unwavering pulse in a world of chaos and uncertainty. It was the universe providing a guarantee, a promise that after every period of darkness the light would inevitably return, growing from a fragile sliver to a triumphant, glorious disk. This profound cultural connection is not merely the stuff of poetry. It is a neurological reality, a pattern recognition embedded in our species over countless generations. The moon's steady presence calmed us. Its predictable cycle gave us a sense of order in the cosmos, a feeling that we were part of a grand, intelligible design. It was the Earth's eternal partner in a lonely universe, a constant companion on our dizzying journey around the sun. Its pearlescent light has illuminated the path for nocturnal hunters, guided lost sailors back to shore, and provided the backdrop for pivotal moments in human history, both monumental and deeply personal. Think of the countless treaties signed, battles fought, and vows exchanged under its watchful, silent gaze. It has been the silent witness to the totality of our existence, the rise and fall of empires, the birth of ideas, the quiet sorrows and explosive joys that define a human life. It is the ultimate constant, the celestial anchor that has held fast while everything on our world below has shifted, evolved and crumbled to dust. And then we grew up. Our gaze shifted from one of worship to one of intense, audacious curiosity. The moon transformed from a god in the sky to a world in its own right, a destination. It became the ultimate symbol of our reach, the focal point of our technological prowess and our unquenchable desire to explore. It was a challenge, a dare issued by the cosmos itself, hanging just beyond our grasp. The race to reach it was not merely a geopolitical contest, it was the culmination of a dream that began the first time a human hand pointed toward that silver orb and wondered, what is it? That single question propelled us to build machines of unimaginable power, to defy the very force that binds us to our world, and to send the bravest among us on the most perilous journey ever undertaken. When we finally arrived, when human boots pressed into the ancient, untouched dust of the lunar surface, our perspective on everything changed forever. The moon became a mirror. Looking back from its magnificent desolation, we saw our own planet for the first time not as a patchwork of competing nations, but as it truly is, a single, fragile, breathtakingly beautiful oasis of life suspended in an infinite velvet blackness. That iconic image, the Earthrise, did more to unite humanity than any treaty ever could. It was a portrait of our shared home, a vulnerable blue marble whose thin veil of atmosphere was the only thing separating us from the void. And this profound revelation, this moment of collective self-awareness, was a gift given to us by the moon. It was our celestial stepping stone, the essential platform from which we could turn around and finally, truly see ourselves. From this new vantage point, we began to unlock its deeper secrets, realizing that its importance was not just cultural or inspirational, but profoundly, physically, existentially necessary. We learned that the moon is not just a companion, it is a co-creator of the world we know. Its story and the Earth story are not separate narratives, but two inseparable chapters of the same violent, beautiful epic. The leading theory of its creation speaks not of a gentle capture, but of a cataclysm of unimaginable scale, a theory called Theia. In the chaotic youth of our solar system, a Mars-sized protoplanet, a rogue world on a collision course, slammed into the nascent Earth. The impact was an apocalypse, a world-shattering event that vaporized both bodies, blasting a colossal plume of molten rock and superheated gas into orbit. For a time, the Earth may have had a ring, a searing incandescent halo of its own shattered essence. Slowly over thousands of years, gravity, the patient sculptor of the cosmos, began its work. This cloud of debris coalesced, spinning and gathering, until it formed a new sphere, a sphere forged from the combined material of two worlds. Our moon was born from this crucible of chaos. It is not an adopted child, it is bone of our bone, flesh of our flesh, a celestial twin born from the most violent trauma in our planet's history. This shared genesis explains so much. It explains the moon's similar composition, its strangely like core, and its orbital lock with our planet. It is the key, the Rosetta Stone that deciphers the history of our own world's formation. The scars on its face, the vast, pockmarked plains and craters, are a preserved record of the solar system's brutal adolescence, a history that was long ago erased from Earth's surface by wind, water, and the relentless churn of plate tectonics. The moon is a library of cosmic history, and its first volume is our own autobiography. Its influence did not end with its creation. As it drifted away from the young, rapidly spinning Earth, it became a powerful gravitational brake. The Earth once rotated in as little as 6 hours, a dizzying spin that would have created winds of unimaginable fury and a world hostile to complex life. But the moon, our loyal partner, began to pull on the Earth's oceans, creating a tidal bulge that acted as a friction brake against the planet's rotation. Over billions of years, it has been steadily, reliably slowing us down, lengthening our days from a frantic blur into the manageable, life-sustaining rhythm of 24 hours we now take for granted. That same tidal pull, the source of our ocean's breath, may have been the very engine that sparked life in the first place. The rhythmic sloshing of the tides in primordial pools could have been the crucial mechanism that mixed the chemical soup of early Earth, concentrating the building blocks of life and catalyzing the first self-replicating molecules. Our most distant ancestor may well owe its existence to this relentless lunar pulse. And perhaps most critically, the moon acts as our planet's gravitational gyroscope. Every planet spins on an axis, and that axis can wobble. Look at Mars. Without a large moon to stabilize it, its axial tilt careens wildly over millions of years, shifting by tens of degrees. This creates catastrophic climate swings, with polar ice caps melting and reforming at the equator, rendering the development of stable, long-term ecosystems virtually impossible. Our Earth, however, is held in a gentle, steady embrace. The moon's gravity latches onto our equatorial bulge, holding our axial tilt at a remarkably stable 23.5 degrees. This stability is the single greatest reason we have predictable, reliable seasons. It is the bedrock of our planet's climate, the foundation upon which the entire global ecosystem has been built over eons. It gives us the temperate zones, the tropics, the polar regions. It dictates the patterns of migration, the cycles of growth and dormancy, the very flow of life on a planetary scale. The moon, in essence, is the architect of Earth's climate stability, the silent guardian that prevents our world from tumbling into climatic chaos. It is our shield, our clock, our anchor, our historian, our muse, and our creator. a constant benevolent presence that has shaped everything from our planet's rotation to our capacity for poetry. It is so deeply integrated into the Earth system, so fundamentally intertwined with the mechanics of life, that we have come to see it as an immutable feature of reality, a permanent fixture in the sky, a guarantee. But what if it isn't? What if the comforting physics of our solar system were to suffer a momentary, inexplicable lapse? What if some unknown force, some cosmic event beyond our comprehension, were to suddenly and completely remove the moon from its orbit? Not shatter it, not send it crashing into us, but simply make it vanish, in an instant, gone. What would happen in that first terrifying moment? What would we feel standing on the surface of the Earth as its 400 quintillion-ton partner suddenly ceased to exist? What would the absence of its gravity do to the delicate balance of our world, a balance that has been fine-tuned over 4.5 billion years? The consequences would not be subtle. They would not be gradual. They would be immediate, catastrophic, and utterly relentless, cascading through every aspect of our planet, from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest layers of our atmosphere, and into the very core of our civilization. This is not a simple thought experiment. To ask what would happen if the moon disappeared is to ask a much more profound question. How is our world truly built? It forces us to peel back the layers of familiarity and confront the hidden architecture of our own existence, to appreciate the myriad, invisible ways in which this silent satellite sustains us. By exploring this ultimate cosmic catastrophe, we embark on a journey to the heart of what makes Earth, Earth. We will investigate the immediate chaos that would unfold in the first hours and days, a world plunged into a darkness it has never known and racked by forces it can no longer contain. We will then trace the slower, more insidious changes that would take hold over weeks, months, and years, as the planet's fundamental rhythms begin to unravel, leading to an ecological collapse on a scale we can barely imagine. And finally, we will look to the far future, to the ultimate fate of a world unmoored, a planet left to drift and wobble through the cosmos without its stabilizing anchor. What would become of life? What would become of us? The answers are written in the laws of physics, in the language of gravity, orbital mechanics, and geology. They are shocking, terrifying, and ultimately, they reveal a breathtaking truth about our place in the universe. They show us that our survival hinges on a delicate, improbable cosmic dance, a partnership forged in fire and maintained by a silent gravitational promise, a promise we have always taken for granted. Until now. What if the greatest act of creation in our planet's history was in fact an act of unimaginable violence? A cosmic crime scene, 4.5 billion years old, whose sole surviving witness hangs silently above us every night. We think we know the moon. We see it as a constant, a serene counterpoint to our chaotic lives, a lantern for lovers, a ghost in the daylight sky. But this perception is a profound illusion. The relationship between Earth and Moon is not one of quiet companionship. It is a bond forged in fire and fury, a gravitational covenant that dictates the rhythm of our world in ways we have only just begun to comprehend. To even ask the question, to imagine a world without it, we must first journey back to a time when our planet was not yet the home we know, but a molten, hellish sphere careening through a lawless young solar system. Imagine a primordial Earth, a seething ball of liquid rock shrouded in a toxic atmosphere. It was a world without form, without continents, without life. In this cosmic shooting gallery, another world was on a collision course. Not an asteroid, not a comet, but a fellow planet, a rogue titan roughly the size of Mars, which we have posthumously named Theia. What happened next was not a mere impact. It was a planetary liquefaction. Theia struck Earth with a glancing yet devastating blow, a collision so energetic it beggars belief. The force was trillions of times greater than all of our nuclear weapons combined, a world-shattering event that vaporized vast portions of both bodies in an instant. Theia's dense iron core, a planetary heart of metal, plunged deep into our own, merging with Earth's core and enriching it forever. The rest, the lighter crust and mantle of both worlds, was blasted into space. For a time, Earth would have been unrecognisable, a glowing wounded giant wearing a spectacular and terrifying ring of fire. Not a placid icy ring like Saturn's, but a churning torus of vaporised rock, superheated gas, and molten debris orbiting at blistering speeds. This was the crucible of the Moon. Within this inferno of creation, gravity began its patient, inexorable work. Droplets of magma coalesced, chunks of cooling rock slammed together, over a period that may have been as short as a single year, or as long as a century. A blink of an eye in cosmic time, this incandescent debris pulled itself together. It collapsed under its own gravity, forming a new sphere, a second world born from the flesh of the first. Our Moon was born, not as a sibling or a cousin, but as a child of Earth, forged from the very same planetary DNA. Initially, this newborn moon was a monster, looming in our skies 20 times larger than it appears today. It was a hellscape of its own, a sphere of magma glowing cherry red, so close that its immense gravity gripped our planet with unimaginable force. Earth itself was spinning violently, a day lasting perhaps only 5 or 6 hours. The two bodies were locked in a ferocious, intimate gravitational embrace. This is the origin of the great cosmic dance that continues to this day. Over eons, the same tidal forces that the Moon exerts on our oceans acted upon our planet's very rock, and in return, Earth's gravity tugged on the Moon. This exchange of energy had two profound consequences. It acted as a brake on Earth's frantic rotation, slowly, painstakingly lengthening our day from a few hours to the 24 we now take for granted. At the same time, this transfer of angular momentum pushed the Moon away, causing it to spiral outwards, a retreat of about 1.5 inches every year, even now. As it drifted away, its own rotation slowed until it became locked in place, forever presenting the same face to us, a silent testament to its violent birth and traumatic youth. We gaze upon the man in the Moon, the dark plains of solidified lava seas, and we are looking at a wound that has never fully turned away from its parent. This dance is not merely a historical curiosity, it is the very engine of our planet's pulse. We feel it most viscerally in the tides. Twice a day, the oceans breathe. They rise and fall in a rhythm so ancient and dependable that entire ecosystems have evolved to live within its metronomic embrace. This is not simply water sloshing around. It is the Moon's gravity, pulling on the entire planet. The pull is strongest on the side of Earth facing the Moon, creating a bulge in the ocean. But it's also weakest on the far side, allowing inertia to create a second corresponding bulge there. As our planet spins beneath these two bulges, coastlines are submerged and then revealed in a planetary-scale oscillation of breathtaking power. This celestial metronome does more than just move water up and down. It creates powerful tidal currents that churn the oceans, mixing vital, nutrient-rich waters from the deep with the sunlit surface waters where phytoplankton, the foundation of the marine food web, can bloom. These currents are a critical part of the planet's circulatory system, a global conveyor belt that transports heat from the equator towards the poles. Without the Moon's constant stirring, our oceans would be more stagnant, more stratified. The poles would become significantly colder, the tropics dangerously hotter. The delicate thermal balance that allows life to thrive across such a broad range of latitudes would be fundamentally broken. This ceaseless tidal flexing even massages the planet's crust, generating a tiny amount of heat in the mantle and possibly influencing tectonic activity over geological timescales. The Moon, from 250,000 miles away, is literally keeping our planet's lifeblood in motion. Yet, its most profound gift, the one that arguably allowed for the development of intelligent life at all, is one we can neither see nor feel. It is the gift of stability. Our Earth does not spin perfectly upright as it orbits the Sun. It is tilted on its axis by 23.5 degrees. This tilt is the sole reason we have seasons. When the northern hemisphere is angled towards the Sun, it receives more direct light and heat, giving us summer. 6 months later, when it's tilted away, we experience the cold of winter. This reliable, predictable cycle of seasons is the clockwork by which all life on Earth is set. It governs migration, hibernation, planting, and harvesting. It has shaped every civilization. But why is this tilt so stable? Planets, after all, are spinning tops in space, and they are not alone. They are constantly being nudged and pulled by the gravity of their neighbours, especially colossal gas giants like Jupiter. Without a stabilising influence, these gravitational perturbations would cause Earth's axial tilt to wobble chaotically over thousands of years. Our planet's obliquity would swing wildly, perhaps from 0 degrees, where there would be no seasons at all, to as much as 85 degrees, where the planet would be lying on its side. Imagine a world like that. For millennia, the North Pole would be locked in searing, continuous sunlight, melting the ice caps and turning half the planet into an uninhabitable desert. Then, the tilt would swing, plunging that same region into an age of absolute darkness and unimaginable cold, a flash-frozen ice age. The climate would be a pendulum of violent extremes, swinging between global furnace and global freezer. Under such conditions, the long, stable evolutionary pathways required for complex, intelligent life to emerge might never have found purchase. Life might exist, but it would be locked in a constant, desperate battle for survival against a planet gone mad. What prevents this catastrophic instability? The Moon. Our disproportionately large, gravitationally powerful Moon acts as a celestial gyroscope. It is a cosmic anchor, sunk deep into the gravitational fabric of space-time, holding Earth steady. Its gravitational pull on our planet's equatorial bulge acts as a powerful restoring force, damping down the wobbles and preventing the wild swings in our axial tilt. It allows our planet to nod gently, a process called precession, over a 26,000-year cycle, but it forbids the kind of chaotic lurching that would shatter our climate. The Moon is the silent guardian of our seasons, the unseen architect of our planet's temperate, life-giving climate. It is the single greatest reason Earth has remained such a remarkably stable and hospitable world for billions of years. Without it, the cradle of life would have been a cradle, perpetually, violently rocked. Beyond these colossal geological forces, the Moon's influence extends into the most delicate and intimate corners of the living world. For billions of years, after the sun sets, the night has not been a realm of absolute blackness. It has been a world painted in silver and shadow, governed by a secondary light source that waxes and wanes with perfect monthly precision. This is the lunar cycle, and it is a clock, a calendar, and a compass for a staggering array of Earth's creatures. Think of the sea turtles, ancient mariners of our world. Hatchlings emerge from their nests on the sand, and, guided by the Moon's gentle light shimmering on the waves, they find their way to the sea. Or consider the great coral spawning events, a wonder of the natural world. Once a year, prompted by the precise phase of the full moon and the temperature of the water, entire reefs erupt in a synchronized, swirling ballet of reproduction, releasing their genetic material into the water at the exact same time to maximize their chances of success. It is a planetary-scale act of creation, orchestrated by a silent celestial conductor. Countless nocturnal predators, from owls to lions, have their hunting patterns dictated by the brightness of the moonlight. Their eyes, evolved for low-light conditions, are most effective under a full moon, while their prey knows to seek deeper cover. Migratory birds, traversing entire continents in the dead of night, have been shown to use the moon as a navigational beacon, a fixed point in their mental maps of the stars. The very biochemistry of some organisms, the subtle hormonal shifts in fish, and the reproductive cycles of insects are deeply entrained with the lunar month. The moon is not just a rock in the sky. It is a fundamental environmental parameter, as critical to the rhythm of nocturnal and marine life as the sun is to life during the day. It has woven itself into the very fabric of biology, a silent partner in the dance of evolution. And what of us? We, who have walked this planet for such a short sliver of its history, are no less children of the moon. Long before we had clocks or calendars, we had the moon's phases. Its reliable 29-day cycle was humanity's first method of marking the passage of time. We counted moons to know when to plant, when to hunt, when the seasons would turn. The very word month is a direct echo of the word moon. It was our first clock, our first calendar, etched into the consciousness of our earliest ancestors. It was the campfire in the sky, a source of comfort and wonder that banished the absolute terror of the prehistoric night. It is no surprise that we wove it into our foundational myths, deifying it as a god or goddess in nearly every culture that has ever existed. It became a symbol of love, of madness, of mystery, of rebirth. It is the muse that has inspired countless works of art, poetry, and music, a shared universal experience that connects every human who has ever lived and looked up. For millennia, it was our guide. Sailors navigating the vast, featureless oceans learned to read its position to find their way. Its predictable path across the sky was one of the few constants in a perilous world. And then, in the 20th century, it transformed from a guide into a destination. It became a beacon, not for a journey across the sea, but for a journey across the void. The moon was the celestial shore that pulled us away from our own, the ultimate symbol of our relentless questing spirit. Landing upon its surface was not merely a technological achievement, it was a profound rite of passage for our species, the moment we stepped off the cradle and proved that we were no longer bound to our homeworld. It is a part of our past, our present, and our future. It is our planetary memory, our stabilizer, our clock, our muse, and our cosmic stepping stone. It is so deeply enmeshed in the story of Earth and of humanity that we have never truly experienced a world without it. Its presence is the baseline of our existence. So now we stand on the precipice of our thought experiment. We have seen its violent birth, its role as a planetary architect, a climatic stabilizer, a biological metronome, and a cultural touchstone. We have established its credentials as the most critical and underappreciated partner in our planet's long history. Its steady, silent influence is woven into every aspect of our world, from the bottom of the sea to the deepest strata of the human soul. Every tide, every season, every legend, every life is touched by its grace. It is not just a light in our sky, it is the anchor that holds our world in place. Now, and only now, can we truly ask the question, what if, in a single, inexplicable moment, that anchor were cut? What happens to a world untethered? We will not have to wait long. The consequences begin not in 1,000,000 years, or in 1,000, or even in a day. They begin in the very first second. There was no explosion, no brilliant flash of cosmic light, only a profound and impossible absence. One moment, the moon was there, a silent sentinel hanging in the velvet black, its familiar face etched with the history of our solar system. The next, it was simply gone. For those few observers gazing upward at that precise instant, the human mind refused to process the sight. An entire world erased from existence. But down here, on the surface of our planet, the first moments were deceptively peaceful. The sky looked wrong. A void had been carved from the night, a patch of darkness that felt deeper, more absolute than the surrounding space. It was a wound in the heavens, an affront to 4.5 billion years of cosmic law. And then, moving at the speed of light, the first consequence arrived. Not a shockwave of matter or energy, but something far more fundamental. A ghost in the machine of gravity. You see, the moon's immense mass didn't just orbit us. It actively warped the fabric of space-time around our planet, holding us in a complex gravitational embrace. With its sudden disappearance, that warp, that gentle cosmic depression in which the Earth rested, snapped back. An invisible, silent tsunami of gravitational energy radiated outwards through the solar system. It was a tremor in reality itself. On Earth, our most sensitive instruments, LIGO and Virgo, designed to detect the faint whispers from colliding black holes billions of light years away, would have been instantly overwhelmed. Their detectors would have screamed an impossible signal, a gravitational thunderclap of unimaginable magnitude originating from our own backyard. This gravitational wave, the death cry of the Earth-Moon system, washed over the inner planets first. It would have subtly nudged Mars in its orbit just for a moment. It would have passed through the asteroid belt, imperceptibly jostling millions of rocks on their lonely paths. Space probes like Voyager and New Horizons, now deep in interstellar space, would eventually feel this final message from home, a faint ripple carrying the news of our solitude. But for us, the wave was just a herald. The true cataclysm was already in motion, born not in the vacuum of space, but in the vast, fluid envelope of our own world. For eons, the moon's gravity has been a relentless sculptor of our planet's oceans, pulling them into two enormous planetary-scale bulges of water. One of these bulges faced the moon directly, drawn outward by its pull. The other formed on the exact opposite side of the Earth, a counter-bulge created because the Earth itself was being pulled toward the moon more strongly than the water on the far side. Our planet was perpetually oblong, squeezed into this shape by a constant gentle tidal force. Every coastline, every harbour, every ecosystem was built around the predictable rhythm of this gravitational breath, the twice-daily rise and fall of the sea. When the moon vanished, that breath was instantly extinguished. The colossal force holding those two continent-sized bulges of water aloft simply ceased to be. Imagine holding a trillion-ton weight on a celestial string, and then, in a nanosecond, cutting that string. The result is not a gentle settling, it is a catastrophic release of potential energy. The water in those two massive bulges, now freed from the moon's grip, began to fall. But it wasn't falling down, it was falling back towards the Earth, collapsing inward under the planet's own gravity. A global oceanic recoil. What happened next was not a tsunami as we know it. A typical tsunami is a displacement event, a pulse of energy from an undersea earthquake moving across the ocean surface. This was different. This was the entire ocean itself, all at once, attempting to find a new equilibrium. It was a planetary-scale slosh. The two collapsing bulges created two diametrically opposed waves, but these weren't waves moving across the water. They were waves of the entire water column, from the abyssal plains to the sunlit surface, rebounding inward and then outward again in a chaotic, oscillating fury. The initial inward collapse would have drawn the water away from some coastlines, in a terrifying, world-spanning low tide, exposing the seabed for miles, revealing ancient shipwrecks and drowning reefs in the open air. This would have been the planet's final, deceptive warning. Then, the rebound. As the collapsing water met in the middle of the ocean basins, the kinetic energy had nowhere to go but up and out. A monstrous surge, not a few hundred feet high, but a wave measured in thousands of feet, began to propagate towards every single continent simultaneously. This was not a wall of water. It was a moving mountain range of liquid, a churning, chaotic elevation of the sea level itself, travelling at the speed of a jetliner. There was no single point of origin. The threat was everywhere. On the shores of California, the Pacific would not crest and break. It would simply rise, an inexorable liquid cliff consuming the coastline with terrifying speed. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Vancouver, all would be scoured from the map not by a breaking wave, but by the sea itself climbing thousands of feet in a matter of minutes, a brutal, unstoppable ascent. The pressure would have been immense, pulverizing concrete and steel, stripping the very soil from the bedrock beneath. Across the globe, the same apocalyptic scene repeated. The Atlantic, a raging, churning cauldron, would surge over the eastern seaboard of the United States. New York would vanish. The entirety of Florida would be submerged beneath a torrent moving with unimaginable force. In Europe, the water would funnel into the North Sea and the Mediterranean, drowning London, Amsterdam, and Rome, erasing millennia of history in a single devastating surge. The ancient cities of Asia, the dense coastal populations of India, the sprawling metropolises of Japan, none would be spared. The sound would have been a constant, deafening roar, the grinding of continents being eroded, the shriek of trapped air, the thunder of a world's worth of water being violently displaced. This was a true extinction-level event, a planetary baptism by drowning, all happening within the first hours of the moon's absence. The sheer volume of water displacing inland would have triggered secondary effects, generating unprecedented seismic shocks as the weight shifted on the tectonic plates, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions in places that had been geologically stable for centuries. our planet was experiencing a violent, convulsive reaction to its sudden solitude. As the oceans were remaking the face of the Earth, another quieter crisis was unfolding above the chaos. Our civilization had wrapped itself in a delicate web of technology, a constellation of thousands of artificial satellites dancing in the void. Each one of them, from the GPS network that guides our planes and ships to the communication satellites that carry our data, was placed in an orbit calculated with breathtaking precision. Those calculations accounted for the Earth's gravity, the slight bulge at its equator, the faint pull of the Sun, and crucially, the ever-present gravitational influence of the Moon. The Moon acted as a distant, massive anchor, a stabilizing partner in the orbital mechanics of near-Earth space. Without it, every single one of those equations was instantly rendered wrong. The effect was not immediate explosion, but a slow, insidious unravelling of our technological infrastructure. Satellites in high Earth orbit, like those in geostationary positions, felt the change most acutely. Their carefully maintained positions, balanced between the Earth's pull and their own velocity, were now subject to a new gravitational reality. They began to drift. Their orbital paths started to oscillate, to decay, to become unpredictable. Navigation systems on the ground, suddenly receiving conflicting and erroneous signals, would begin to fail. The global positioning system, the invisible utility that underpins modern finance, logistics, agriculture, and transportation, would become unreliable, then useless. Within hours, our ability to navigate the seas and skies would revert to the methods of the 19th century. Communication satellites, the backbone of our interconnected world, would follow. The massive dishes on Earth, pointed at exact spots in the sky, would lose their targets as the satellites drifted from their assigned stations. The internet would fracture, international phone calls would fail, live television broadcasts would go dark. The seamless flow of information that we take for granted would be severed, plunging continents into isolation. Military satellites, our eyes in the sky, would lose their bearings, creating a terrifying blindness at a moment of supreme global panic. A cascade of failures would ripple through the system, a slow-motion technological collapse occurring just out of sight, high above the drowned cities and surging seas. We would be left deaf, blind, and lost, both literally and figuratively. And beneath it all, the planet itself was changing its tempo. For billions of years, the Moon's gravitational drag on Earth's tidal bulges has acted as a gentle but persistent brake on our planet's rotation. This tidal friction has been slowly stealing Earth's angular momentum, causing our day to lengthen by about 2 milliseconds every century. It's a subtle, almost imperceptible process, the slow winding down of a cosmic clock. With the Moon gone, that brake was suddenly and completely released. It's the same principle as an ice skater spinning on the ice. When she pulls her arms in, her rotation speeds up to conserve angular momentum. Earth, by losing its massive distant partner, was now pulling its own mass into a more compact spherical shape, especially in the oceans, and so our planet began to spin faster. The initial change would be minuscule, shaving mere fractions of a second off the 24-hour day. You wouldn't feel it. But our atomic clocks, the meticulous timekeepers of our civilization, would detect it immediately. The very definition of a second calibrated to the Earth's stately rotation would be thrown into question. This seemingly minor alteration was a harbinger of a far more profound instability. It was the first sign that not just our oceans or our technology, but the fundamental physics of our world, the length of our day, the stability of our seasons, the very tilt of our planet's axis, had been unmoored. The Earth was now a gyroscope that had just lost its primary stabilizer, and it was beginning a slow, terrifying wobble that would unfold over the coming months and years. On the ground, for the survivors huddled on high ground, watching the world's coastlines drown, the response was primal fear. Panic, chaos, and a desperate struggle for survival took hold. But in scattered pockets around the globe, in observatories on remote mountaintops, in university physics departments, and in the quiet control rooms of space agencies, a different kind of scramble was underway. The first alerts would have come from the astronomers. Telescopes, both automated and manned, would have sent back impossible data. The target-designated moon was not there. Alarms would have blared. Frantic checks would have been run against star charts, instrument calibrations, software glitches, anything to explain the anomaly. But every telescope on Earth, and even the Hubble and Webb space telescopes, would return the same chilling verdict: a void. Simultaneously, the geophysicists would be seeing their instruments go wild. Seismometers across the globe would be registering the colossal impact of the tidal waves, a planetary-scale tremor that would dwarf any earthquake in recorded history. Gravimeters would be reporting a fundamental shift in the local gravitational field. For these scientists, the initial disbelief would have given way to a frantic, horrifying synthesis of the data. The astronomical absence of the moon, combined with the geophysical chaos on Earth, could only point to one universe-altering conclusion. They were the first to understand the truth, the first to grasp the sheer scale of the forces now at play. In underground command centres, connected by the few satellite links that were still functioning, a desperate race against time began. They had to model the consequences to predict what would happen next. The first tsunamis were a catastrophic but immediate effect. The real question, the one that would decide the ultimate fate of humanity, was what long-term changes had been set in motion. They needed to understand the new physics of their own planet, a planet now alone, unstable, and spinning into a future that was utterly and terrifyingly unknown. The initial, violent reordering has passed into memory. Humanity has survived the first days, the first moonless nights, the silencing of the great tides. We have adapted to a world without that pearlescent glow, a world where the oceans now answer only to the distant sun and their own simmering inertia. A fragile, wounded peace seems to have settled. But what we have endured is merely the opening stanza of a far more profound and terrifying symphony. The moon's most vital contribution to life on Earth was never its light nor its pull on the water. It was its silence, its unseen, unnoticed, and absolutely essential gift of stability. For 4.5 billion years, it has acted as our planet's gravitational gyroscope, a celestial counterweight holding us steady in the cosmic ballet. It locked our world into a gentle, predictable lean of 23.5 degrees, a tilt that gave us the reliable rhythm of the seasons, the very metronome of life itself. Now, that gyroscope is gone, and in its absence, a slow, almost imperceptible wobble has begun. Imagine a child's spinning top, perfectly balanced, humming with speed. This was Earth, held in place by the moon's constant companionship. But now the stabilizing hand has vanished. The top has begun to falter. The gravitational nudges from the colossal gas giants, Jupiter and Saturn, once gentle suggestions easily shrugged off by the Earth-Moon system, now land with the force of geologic hammers. Each planetary alignment, each subtle tug from across the solar system, pulls on our world's equatorial bulge, uncorrected. The wobble, known to science as axial precession, is no longer a stately 26,000-year circle traced across the heavens. It is becoming erratic, unpredictable. More terrifying still is the change in our obliquity, the very angle of our tilt. For eons, the moon constrained this tilt to a narrow life-sustaining range, shifting just a couple of degrees over tens of thousands of years. This slow, predictable shift drove the gentle pulse of ice ages, the great breathing of our planet. Without that lunar restraint, the range is now unbound. The Earth is beginning to tumble. At first, the changes are barely noticeable, something for astronomers and climate scientists to debate in hushed, urgent tones. The North Star, Polaris, once a fixed point of celestial certainty, begins to drift from its throne at a barely perceptible but accelerating rate. Summers in the Northern Hemisphere feel just a fraction hotter, winters a touch more severe. Nothing yet to cause global panic, but the models, the cold, unforgiving computer simulations, tell a story of utter calamity. They show our planet's axial tilt, freed from its lunar chains, beginning a chaotic journey. Within a few short millennia, a geologic eye blink, our 23.5 degree lean could lurch to 30 degrees, then 40. Then it could swing back wildly, overcorrecting to 10 or even 0. We have lost our planetary anchor, and we are now adrift in a sea of gravitational chaos. The predictable cycle of spring, summer, autumn, winter, the foundational promise upon which all civilization is built, is slated for demolition. We have entered the age of planetary fever. 1,000 years pass. The wobble is no longer theoretical. Earth's tilt has drifted to 35 degrees. The city of Paris, once a jewel of temperate Europe, now experiences summers of unbearable Saharan intensity. The sun hangs almost directly overhead at noon, baking the ancient stones, boiling the river Seine, and turning vineyards into cracked barren earth. For months there is no relief, no gentle evening cool. The nights are short, sweltering and suffocating. Conversely, the winters have become things of mythic horror. The sun barely scrapes above the horizon, a weak, distant disk of light offering no warmth. The city is plunged into a brutal Siberian deep freeze for months on end, a darkness and cold that its infrastructure, its biology, its very soul was never designed to withstand. The seasons are no longer a gentle transition, they are a violent lurch between two unbearable extremes. This is not weather. This is a fundamental betrayal by the sky itself. And what of the equator? The regions we once called the tropics, lush with the greatest biodiversity on the planet, are being systematically sterilized. With the planet's tilt so extreme, the sun's most direct energy is now focused for long periods on the new distended tropics far to the north and south. The Amazon rainforest, the lungs of our world, experiences a climate it never evolved for. The sun's path has shifted. The rains, once so reliable, become sporadic, then vanish for years at a time. The great forest, starved of water and baked under a relentless, unfamiliar sun, begins to die. Fires rage on a continental scale, releasing millennia of stored carbon into an already traumatized atmosphere, a terrifying feedback loop that accelerates the chaos. The world is caught in a climatic death spiral. Growing food has become an exercise in futility, a desperate gamble against a stacked deck. How can you plant a crop when you have no idea if the coming season will bring a biblical flood, a decade-long drought, or a flash freeze in what should be the height of summer? The global agricultural belts from the American Midwest to the Ukrainian steppe are rendered obsolete. The delicate dance of temperature, sunlight and rainfall that allowed us to feed billions has collapsed. Famine becomes the default state of human existence. Humanity scatters, becoming a nomadic species once more, not in search of migrating herds, but in a desperate globe-spanning chase for transient pockets of survivable climate. We hunt for the ever-shifting zones where the planetary wobble momentarily creates a semblance of the old stability. But these havens are fleeting, lasting a few generations at most before the relentless tilt of the planet turns them into the next furnace or freezer. Civilization, with its stationary cities and its reliance on predictable harvests, withers. The great monuments of our past remain, but they are now markers in a global graveyard, drowned by rising seas in one epoch, buried by encroaching sand dunes in the next. They are testaments to a species that once believed it had mastered its world, ignorant of the celestial thread by which its entire existence hung. Below the surface of this climatic maelstrom, another, deeper chaos is unfolding. The great ocean currents, the planet's circulatory system, are in revolt. For millennia, conveyor belts like the Gulf Stream carried warm tropical water north, giving Western Europe a climate far milder than its latitude would suggest. But these currents are driven by a delicate balance of temperature and salinity, a balance now shattered. The extreme seasons are creating vast new gradients in ocean temperature. Polar ice, which now forms and melts in radically new locations due to the wobbling axis, floods the seas with fresh water, disrupting the salinity engines that drive the deep water circulation. The Gulf Stream sputters, weakens, and then finally veers off its ancient course. Northern Europe, deprived of its lifeline of warmth, is plunged into a near-permanent ice age, its climate suddenly resembling that of northern Siberia. Meanwhile, the tropical heat that the current once carried away remains trapped in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, superheating the water to unprecedented temperatures. The The result is the birth of storms that defy categorization. Hypercanes, monstrous vortices of wind and water with power that dwarfs anything in recorded history, scour the coastlines, making them utterly uninhabitable. The oceans, once the cradle of life, become a battleground of extremes. The intricate web of marine ecosystems tuned to specific temperatures, currents, and seasonal light cycles is shredded. Coral reefs, already ghostly relics from a more stable time, are boiled and then frozen in alternating eras. Plankton blooms, the very base of the marine food web, fail to appear in the right places at the right times, starving the great whales and the small fish alike. Vast oxygen-deficient dead zones spread across the seafloor, suffocating all that cannot flee. The fish populations that sustained coastal communities for millennia vanish, their migration routes scrambled, their spawning grounds destroyed. The deep, rhythmic breathing of the ocean, the pulse that governed life for 500 million years, has become a death rattle. We look out upon the waves and no longer see a source of life and sustenance, but a churning, chaotic engine of global destruction. Another part of our home that has turned against us. And what of the sky? For all of human history, the heavens were our map, our clock, our calendar. The predictable procession of the constellations, the unwavering anchor of the North Star, the patient arc of the moon, they were the constants upon which we built our understanding of the universe and our place within it. Now, that cosmic surety is gone. The night is deeper, more profoundly black than any human had ever experienced, a velvet void pricked only by the cold, indifferent light of the stars. But even those stars are no longer reliable guides. As the Earth wobbles, the celestial poles wander across the sky. Polaris is just another star now, its special status a fading cultural memory. New pole stars emerge for a few centuries, only to be abandoned by the planet's erratic dance. Navigation, both for the last seafaring humans and for the countless animal species that rely on celestial or magnetic cues, becomes a near impossible task. Migratory birds, their innate star maps rendered useless, perish by the millions, lost on impossible journeys. Sea turtles, searching for nesting beaches guided by ancient magnetic fields, find themselves hopelessly adrift as the planet's unstable spin begins to interfere with the churning of its molten core, causing the magnetic poles themselves to wander and weaken. The sky is no longer a source of wonder and guidance, but a symbol of our profound and terrifying unmooring from the universe. We are living on a deck that is pitching and rolling in a storm, with no compass and no landmark to guide us home. Every certainty has been stripped away. The very ground beneath our feet feels untrustworthy, subject to the whims of a planet that has lost its way. The psychological toll is immense. How do you plan for a future? How do you build a home? How do you pass down stories and wisdom to the next generation when the fundamental reality of the world changes not over geologic time, but within a single human lifespan? The concepts of homeland, of ancestral grounds, of seasons for planting and seasons for harvest, all become meaningless. The rhythm of life is broken. We are haunted by the ghost of a world that was, a world of gentle seasons and predictable tides, a world made possible by a silent, watchful companion that we never truly appreciated until it was gone. Now we must look further into the truly deep future, into the abyss of time where the consequences of this loss spiral into the truly bizarre. The chaotic dance of our axis is only just beginning. The simulations, once grim predictions, are now lived reality. Earth's tilt continues its wild excursions. In 50,000 years, it lurches to a staggering 54 degrees. The planet is now effectively spinning on its side. For a quarter of the year, the North Pole points almost directly at the Sun. The entire Arctic Circle, and lands far south of it, experiences a season of perpetual scorching daylight. The ice caps, of course, are long gone, vaporized. The tundra melts, releasing colossal quantities of methane, a final catastrophic greenhouse insult. The oceans boil. Then, for the next quarter of the year, that same hemisphere is plunged into the crushing cold and absolute darkness of a polar night that lasts for months. Life, what little of it remains, must endure these unimaginable swings from blast furnace to cryogenic freezer. Perhaps, In the deepest troughs of time, the planet's tilt will swing even further, past 90 degrees, a fate similar to the ice giant Uranus. It would be a world where the concept of a day and a night, as we understood them, ceases to exist for much of the planet. One hemisphere would face the sun for decades, while the other would be locked in a generation-spanning winter. Could any life, even the most resilient microbial life, survive such an alien environment? Our world, once the single, vibrant blue marble of life in a vast, dark emptiness, has become a failed experiment. It is a testament to the brutal truth of celestial mechanics, that stability is a rare and precious gift, and that the difference between a garden and a wasteland can be a single gravitational whisper from a long-lost friend. The moon's absence has not merely changed our world, it has, over the long, agonizing march of millennia, erased it, replacing it with a series of hostile alien planets, all occupying the same orbit. We are no longer inhabitants, we are just ghosts, haunting the ruins of a paradise we never knew we had. And so, in the deafening silence of a night sky now wounded and empty, the true consequences began to unspool. The initial shock, the frantic calculations, the global awe at the vanished celestial partner, all of that was merely the overture. What followed was the symphony of collapse, played out upon a planet suddenly and violently untethered from the rhythm it had known for 4.5 billion years. The great stabilizing hand of the moon was gone, and the Earth, like a spinning top struck by a careless giant, began its catastrophic wobble. This wasn't a gentle, predictable procession anymore. It was a chaotic, drunken lurch through space. The planet's axis of rotation, that elegant 23.5-degree tilt that gave us the gentle procession of seasons, became a wild, unpredictable variable. Over decades that felt like geologic heartbeats, it would swing wildly, pitching the North Pole toward the sun with a ferocity that defied all our historical climate models, then careening back, plunging the equator into a twilight freeze. This axial instability became the engine of our ruin. The very concept of seasons, a cycle so deeply embedded in our biology, our agriculture and our culture, was annihilated. Imagine the Amazon rainforest, the planet's verdant lung, suddenly tilted away from the sun's direct rays. Within a generation, this crucible of life would be encased in frost, its vibrant canopy turned to a skeletal lattice of ice, the roar of its creatures replaced by the sharp crack of freezing timber. Then, just as some perverse new ecosystem might begin to adapt, the axis would swing back. The sun would bear down with the intensity of a celestial blowtorch, melting the ice, scorching the dead trees, and baking the fragile soil into a sterile red desert. We were no longer living on a planet with climate zones. We were passengers on a world having a seizure. The temperate regions that housed the majority of human civilization became a nightmarish lottery of extremes. A decade-long winter with glaciers grinding south over the ruins of Chicago and Berlin could be followed by a 20-year summer that turned the plains of Europe into a blistering Sahara, where rivers boiled and the very air seemed to shimmer with heat. This planetary fever dream unleashed the full, untempered fury of our atmosphere. The differential heating of the planet's surface, now chaotic and extreme, created temperature gradients that the world had never seen. Immense masses of superheated air rising from what was once Antarctica would collide with plumes of cryogenic air plunging down from a sun-starved equator. The result was weather that defied our vocabulary. We had to invent new words for the storms that tore across the continents, as hurricane and typhoon became tragically inadequate. These were hypercanes, storms wider than entire countries, with wind speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour. Winds that didn't just rip roofs from houses, but houses from their foundations, and foundations from the bedrock itself. They carried not rain, but solid, horizontal walls of water, capable of eroding mountainsides in a single afternoon. The sky, once a canvas of predictable beauty, became our tormentor. Atmospheric rivers, vast corridors of moisture in the sky, became atmospheric oceans, dumping catastrophic, landscape-altering amounts of rainfall. The great breadbaskets of the world, the American Midwest, the Ukrainian steppe, were either drowned under feet of water in a single day or desiccated by years of relentless, unbroken drought. There was no longer a pattern. There was no longer a forecast. There was only chaos. You could wake to a blizzard in the morning that buried your home in 10 feet of snow, only for a searing wind to arrive by noon, melting it all into a flash flood that would carry your world away by evening. The delicate machinery of global air circulation, the jet streams and trade winds that had guided sailors and shaped empires, shattered into a million unpredictable eddies and currents. Flying became impossible. Global communication, reliant on satellites that now had to contend with a wildly turbulent upper atmosphere, grew spotty, then silent. We were becoming a world of isolated islands, each trapped under its own patch of hostile, violent sky. And beneath this tormented sky, the oceans raged. We thought we had understood the initial tidal chaos, the sloshing of the world's water without the moon's steadying pull. We were wrong. That was only the first stage. Now these unpredictable solar tides were amplified by the ceaseless assault of the new superstorms. The planet's water was no longer a cradle of life, but a relentless, grinding engine of destruction. Coastlines, the very concept of a stable border between land and sea, ceased to exist. One day, the water might recede for miles, exposing the continental shelf in an eerie, silent panorama of death. The next, a monstrous, disorganized surge, driven by a distant hypercane and the sun's gravitational tug, would scour the land hundreds of miles inland, leaving nothing but a slurry of salt water, mud, and the pulverized remains of our greatest coastal cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. They weren't just flooded, they were erased, ground into the sediment by the planet's churning, relentless tantrum. This constant, violent mixing of the ocean had a far more insidious effect. The delicate layers of temperature and salinity that allow marine ecosystems to flourish were destroyed. The great ocean conveyor belts, the currents that transported heat and nutrients around the globe, sputtered and died. With this, the phytoplankton, the microscopic forests of the sea that form the absolute base of the marine food web and produce more than half of the planet's oxygen, went into terminal decline. They were churned into depths they could not survive, starved of sunlight and poisoned by the upwelling of anoxic waters from the abyss. The ocean, once a kaleidoscope of vibrant blue and green from orbit, began to turn a sickly, uniform brown. It was the colour of death. Its demise was a silent, creeping apocalypse that we couldn't see, but which we soon felt in every breath. The oxygen content of the atmosphere began to drop, slowly, inexorably. The air grew thinner, and life for everyone, everywhere, became just a little bit harder. The chain reaction of extinction was swift and merciless. With the phytoplankton gone, the zooplankton that fed on them starved. The krill vanished. The great schools of fish that fed the world disappeared into the sterile, churning soup. The whales and dolphins, magnificent intelligences of the deep, were the last to go, their haunting songs fading from the world's oceans forever. Their immense bodies washed ashore on coasts that were unrecognizable, monuments to a world of life that no longer existed. On land, the story was just as bleak. The rapid, violent swings in climate meant that no ecosystem could adapt. The ancient forests of the world, unable to migrate 1,000 miles in a single generation to follow a survivable climate, simply died. They froze or they burned, leaving behind skeletal grey landscapes haunted by the wind. The billions of animals that relied on them, the insects, the birds, the mammals, were caught in an evolutionary trap from which there was no escape. The great migrations of caribou and wildebeest ended, their paths blocked by impassable glaciers or impassable deserts. The complex tapestry of life, woven over millions of years of lunar stability, was unravelling thread by thread, until all that was left was a planet of ghosts. As if the violence from the sky and sea were not enough, the Earth itself seemed to join in the destruction. For eons, the moon's gravity had exerted a constant rhythmic tidal pull, not just on the oceans, but on the planet's crust. It was a gentle planetary scale massage that stabilised stresses in tectonic plates. Without it, that subtle, stabilizing force was gone. The immense weight of the new, fast-forming glaciers in once temperate zones pressed down on the crust, while the rapid melting of old ice sheets caused the land beneath to rebound. This redistribution of mass, combined with the chaotic sloshing of the oceans, began to change the stress patterns on fault lines around the world. Scientists had long debated the possibility, but now we were living the terrifying proof. The planet's crust, already a jigsaw puzzle of barely contained tension, became more volatile. The ring of fire, which had been relatively quiet for a century, awoke in a furious coordinated eruption of volcanoes that choked the already turbulent atmosphere with ash, further scrambling the climate. Great earthquakes, long overdue, were triggered in succession, ripping through the hearts of our inland cities, toppling what the storms had not yet claimed. The very ground beneath our feet, the one thing we had always trusted as solid and reliable, became another source of terror in our moonless world. And what of us? What of the 7 billion souls who had once looked up and seen a companion in the night sky? We, who had built a civilization on the comforting illusion of predictability, were now facing the ultimate existential crisis. The first wave of collapse was the Great Retreat, the largest and most desperate migration in human history. More than 2 billion people living in coastal regions were forced to flee inland, abandoning their homes and histories to the relentless, unpredictable sea. They became a tidal wave of refugees, overwhelming the resources of the interior nations, sparking conflicts and spreading disease. There was no plan, no coordinated effort. There was only panic. This was followed swiftly by the failure of the world's food supply. With the seasons gone and the weather a maelstrom of extremes, industrial agriculture, the bedrock of our global population, ceased to exist. The breadbaskets of the world became wastelands. Famine on a scale never before imagined stalked the land. Nations as we knew them dissolved. Borders became meaningless lines on maps of a world that no longer existed. Governments, powerless against the fury of the planet itself, crumbled. In their place, tribalism and brutal survivalism took hold. The fight for dwindling resources, a patch of arable land, a clean source of water, a secure shelter, became the only form of politics. The complex interconnected web of our global civilization proved to be exquisitely fragile. The power grids, pounded by perpetual superstorms, failed. The internet, our global consciousness, went dark. The intricate supply chains that moved food, medicine, and energy around the world were severed, not in one place, but in a million places at once. We were thrown back into a dark age, but a dark age with no stable climate, no reliable seasons for planting, and no friendly moon to light the terrifying star-dusted nights. Our knowledge, our art, our science, all became unaffordable luxuries. We had spent centuries looking out at the cosmos, but now we were forced to look down, at the mud, at the rubble, at the faces of our starving children. The psychological toll was perhaps the greatest blow. For millennia, humanity had found comfort in the cycles of nature, in the rising of the sun, the turning of the seasons, the waxing and waning of the moon. It was the clockwork of the universe that gave us a sense of place, of order. Now we lived in a world of pure chaos, a world that made no sense. We were adrift in a cosmic storm, and the anxiety, the sheer unrelenting terror of that reality, broke our collective spirit. We became a species haunted by memory, telling stories to our young of a time when the world was kind, when the sky was blue, when the ocean was calm, and when a beautiful silver orb would grace the night, a silent guardian watching over our dreams. Generations passed in this crucible of survival. The population of humanity plummeted from billions to millions, and then to scattered, isolated thousands. The great cities, scoured by wind and water, shattered by the groaning earth, were slowly swallowed by the strange, resilient and alien new ecosystems that began to emerge in the chaos. We were no longer the masters of this planet. We were just another species of mammal, clinging to existence on a world that was actively, violently hostile to us. The age of humanity, the Anthropocene, with all its triumphs and hubris, had come to a sudden, brutal and ignominious end. The great war against nature was over. We had not just been defeated, we had been rendered irrelevant. The Earth would continue its drunken dance through space, a world of furious storms and broken rhythms without us. And yet, life, in some form, endures. The struggle was not over. It was for the last scattered remnants of our species, hiding in the deepest caves and the most sheltered valleys of a world that was no longer our own, the war for survival, the war for the very soul of what it meant to be human, had only just begun. And so, after the great unravelling, after the centuries of planetary convulsions had finally subsided, the Earth did not find peace. It found a new, terrible rhythm. The chaotic death throes of our climate, which we witnessed in the immediate aftermath, settled into a predictable, monstrous cycle of extremes, a pendulum of planetary agony swinging through the millennia. Without its celestial anchor, its gravitational gyroscope, the planet's axial tilt, our once gentle 23.5-degree nod became a wild, drunken lurch. Over tens of thousands of years, it now swings from an upright, almost 0-degree orientation to a grotesque 70 or 80-degree slant, lying nearly on its side in the solar system. This is the new equilibrium, not a state of balance, but a permanent state of war waged by the cosmos upon the surface of our world. We have traded the familiar, life-giving procession of 4 seasons for 2 planetary epochs, the long scorch and the great freeze. Imagine standing on the surface tens of thousands of years from now, looking not at a calendar, but at a geological timetable of survival. Let us venture into one of these far-flung futures, into the heart of the long scorch. The Earth's axis has tilted to its horrifying maximum. For decades, perhaps a century, the North Pole points almost directly at the Sun. The Arctic is no longer a land of ice, it is the epicenter of a global furnace. The Sun does not rise or set here. It hangs, motionless and eternal, a celestial blowtorch pinned to the roof of the world, boiling away the memory of winter. The Arctic Ocean is gone, vaporized into an atmosphere choking with moisture. What remains is a vast, sterile basin of sun-cracked salt, a glistening white scar where life once teemed. The continents of the northern hemisphere are baked into a uniform ochre desert. The great forests of North America and Siberia, which would have absorbed so much carbon, are nothing but petrified skeletons half buried in red dust. Rivers like the Mississippi and the Volga are ghostly canyons, their beds littered with the smooth, heat-shattered stones that were once their lifeblood. The great mountain ranges, the Rockies and the Alps, stand naked and brutal, stripped of their icy crowns, their rock faces exfoliating under the relentless thermal assault. Temperatures on this sun-facing side of the planet rarely drop below boiling. Water cannot exist as a liquid. It is either searing steam or, further south, a superheated, highly saline brine in the deepest trenches of the former Atlantic. The very air on this side of the world becomes an agent of destruction. The atmosphere, supercharged with energy, creates weather systems of unimaginable violence. Permanent continent-sized hyperhurricanes rage at the terminator, that twilight zone between the scorched day and the frozen night. These are not storms as we knew them. They're grinding planetary heat engines with winds screaming at 1,000 miles per hour. They are the planet's desperate, futile attempt to redistribute the thermal imbalance, dragging scorching, moisture-laden air into the hemisphere of darkness. Standing at this boundary, you would experience a perpetual, violent twilight, a world illuminated only by the constant fury of lightning, so dense it creates a strobe-like flickering across the ravaged landscape. The sound would be a constant deafening roar, the shriek of a world tearing itself apart. Meanwhile, the southern hemisphere is locked in a commensurate horror, a winter that lasts for generations. Antarctica, already a land of ice, grows into a monstrous polar cap, its glaciers creeping northwards across the frozen oceans. Australia, South America, and southern Africa are encased in a coffin of ice miles thick, a glacial tomb preserving the ruins of a forgotten world beneath its crushing weight. Any life caught between these two hells is simply obliterated, ground to dust by the winds, or flash frozen under the encroaching ice. This is not a planet that fosters life. This is a planet that scours it away, resetting the board with fire and ice over and over again. But the pendulum of chaos is relentless. After 10,000 years of fire, it begins its slow, inexorable swing back. The axis straightens, and the planet plunges into the opposite nightmare, the Great Freeze. As the tilt reduces to near zero, the poles receive almost no direct sunlight, ever. The sun's energy is now perpetually focused on a narrow band around the equator. The polar caps, which had receded during the hothouse phase, now begin to grow with terrifying speed. Ice sheets, born in the frigid darkness of the poles, surge outwards. They are not the slow, crawling glaciers of our memory. These are avalanches of ice on a continental scale, burying everything in their path. The world slowly, systematically encases itself in white. The oceans, no longer stirred by powerful lunar tides, become stagnant and stratified, their surfaces freezing over, cutting off the light to the depth below. Soon, from orbit, the Earth would be almost unrecognizable. It is a brilliant, polished cue ball, its once vibrant blues and greens lost beneath a near-total glaciations. A snowball Earth, not as a rare geological event, but as a recurring, predictable season in our planet's new life. Life in this epoch is a fugitive. The only habitable zone is a shrinking, narrow belt straddling the equator. Here, the sun hangs low in the sky, offering just enough warmth to keep the ice at bay. But this is no tropical paradise. It is a climatic war zone. The temperature differential between this sliver of warmth and the vast global ice sheets creates winds of unimaginable ferocity. A permanent jet stream of frigid air screams around the planet, creating a perpetual blizzard at the edge of the ice. This equatorial refuge is a world of twilight and wind, where the only plants that can survive are low-lying, moss-like organisms that cling to the rock, their forms shaped by the constant gale. The oceans here are a churn of icy slurry, their shores battered by frozen waves. For any complex animal life that might have survived, this would be a prison, a thin, circular band of territory, trapped between two advancing walls of utter cold. And even this refuge is temporary. As the planetary tilt continues its cycle, this band too will eventually freeze or scorch, forcing any survivors into yet another desperate migration, or into the finality of extinction. The Earth, our perfect cradle of life, has become the most hostile environment in the inner solar system, its surface rendered utterly uninhabitable for any creature that remembers the gentle world we once knew. The chronicle of our planet is no longer written in the fossils of evolving creatures, but in the sterile layers of wind-scoured dust and continent-crushing ice. Yet, life is tenacious. It is a chemical imperative, a stubborn spark that, once lit, is notoriously difficult to extinguish completely. While the surface of our world becomes a stage for this epic of destruction, could that spark have found sanctuary in the deep? Could a shadow biosphere, a lineage of life completely divorced from the sun, have carried on in the planet's hidden corners? To find the answer, we must journey down, far from the reach of the scorching sun and the grinding ice, into the crushing blackness of the abyssal plains. Here, miles beneath the frozen or boiling surface of the oceans, lies a world that barely noticed the moon's departure. It is a realm of eternal night, extreme pressure and blistering heat, powered not by sunlight, but by the planet's own internal furnace. Along the mid-ocean ridges, where tectonic plates pull apart, hydrothermal vents, the famed black smokers, continue to gush superheated, mineral-rich water into the abyss. In our time, these were oases for bizarre life forms, giant tube worms with blood-red plumes, ghostly white crabs, and dense mats of sulfur-eating bacteria. For them, the moon was a distant abstraction, a faint gravitational tug that meant nothing compared to the immediate life-giving energy pouring from the planet's core. In our moonless future, these communities would become the last bastions of complex life. While the surface biosphere was being annihilated, the descendants of these extremophiles would thrive in blissful ignorance. Their ecosystem is entirely self-contained. The bacteria form the base of the food chain, chemosynthesizing, creating living matter from the toxic brew of hydrogen sulfide and other chemicals. They are the plants of this deep, dark world. And on them, a whole food web could continue to exist, evolving in complete isolation for millions of years. Imagine, far in the future, alien explorers arriving at this barren-looking planet. They might scan the surface and declare it dead, but with more sensitive instruments, they might detect faint heat signatures along the ocean floors. And if they sent a probe down into that crushing dark, they would be greeted by a sight of stunning improbability. A vibrant, writhing world of alien forms, creatures that have not seen the light of any sun for eons, the true inheritors of Earth. Perhaps life found other refuges as well. Deep within the Earth's crust, miles below the surface, live microbial communities that we are only just beginning to discover. These are the subsurface lithoautotrophic microbial ecosystems, or slimes. They metabolize rock, drawing energy from chemical reactions that unfold over geological timescales. For them, the chaos on the surface would be a distant rumour, muffled by miles of solid granite. They would continue their slow, patient existence, their evolution proceeding at a glacial pace, completely insulated from the climatic turmoil above. These are the deep survivors, the microbial ark preserving Earth's genetic legacy. And what of us? What of the species that built cities, that wrote poetry, that reached for the stars and once walked upon the very moon whose absence sealed their fate? Did humanity, with all its ingenuity and resilience, find a way? The answer is almost certainly heartbreakingly no. The changes were simply too vast, too fast on a civilizational timescale, and too absolute. Our global civilization is a fragile machine, utterly dependent on the stable climate the moon guaranteed. Agriculture, the bedrock of our existence, would have collapsed within the first few centuries of the Great Unravelling. The coastal cities, where the majority of our population lived, would have been scoured by the initial supertides, and then, later, either baked into oblivion or buried under miles of ice. We are creatures of the surface, creatures of sunlight. We are not adapted for the extremes that became the new norm. The ruins of our world would be a silent testament to our passing. New York, London, Tokyo, their skeletal remains would lie entombed deep within the ice sheets of the Great Freeze, only to be exhumed 10,000 years later during the Long Scorch, their steel and concrete foundations blasted into dust by the thermal winds. Our satellites would long have tumbled from the sky. Our proudest monuments would be ground into sand. We would become just another thin layer in the rock strata, a brief, anomalous flicker of intelligence in the planet's long history, a cautionary tale written in fossilized plastic and radioactive isotopes. But perhaps this is too cynical. Is it possible that a fragment, a tiny, desperate remnant of humanity, could have survived? It would have required a feat of engineering and adaptation far beyond anything we have ever accomplished. It would have meant abandoning the surface of the Earth forever. Imagine a final desperate act of a dying civilization, the construction of immense subterranean cities burrowed deep into the planetary crust, shielded by miles of rock from the radiation and temperature swings above. These bunkers would need to be entirely self-sufficient, powered by geothermal energy, with closed-loop ecosystems recycling every atom of air, water, and waste. For generations, humanity would become a race of troglodytes, of cave dwellers. They would live and die without ever seeing a natural sunrise or feeling the wind on their faces. Their knowledge of the surface world, of the sun and the stars, would become the stuff of legend, of mythology. They might tell stories passed down through the dim, artificially lit corridors of a lost paradise, a world with a gentle sky, a world with a sun that moved, a world watched over by a silent silver guardian in the night. Or perhaps a few survivors took to the sea, building nomadic, submersible habitats that could follow the thin, migrating habitable zones in the oceans, always staying one step ahead of the boiling surface or the advancing ice. This is the bleakest of hopes. A life in a metal tomb, deep underground or deep underwater, is not the future we dreamed of. It is a state of perpetual siege, an existence stripped of all the beauty and wonder that made our world what it was. These descendants would not be like us. They would be a new kind of human shaped by darkness and pressure, their bodies and minds adapted to a life of confinement. They might even forget their own history, forget the cosmic accident that condemned them to this fate. They would be the ultimate proof of a life's tenacity, but also the ultimate symbol of our loss. The Earth would continue its violent, lurching dance around the Sun, and on its surface, and perhaps deep within it, the faint pulse of life would beat on. But the vibrant, intelligent, and deeply improbable world that the Moon helped create and protect, our world, would be gone forever. It would be a ghost planet, haunted by the memory of a light that once filled its night sky, a constant, silent reminder of the profound and fragile connection that ties our destiny to the cosmos. And we are left to ponder the staggering realization that the greatest gift in our cosmic neighborhood was not the energy of our star or the water in our oceans, but the simple, quiet, and irreplaceable presence of that barren ball of rock we called the Moon. And so, our harrowing thought experiment comes to a close. We have walked the shores of a planet orphaned by its closest companion, a world you would no longer recognize as home. We have witnessed the great global slosh of the oceans, a final, chaotic farewell surge before the waters settled into a dreadful, stagnant calm. We have felt the ground shudder as the planet's crust, released from millennia of lunar tension, began to groan and crack with a new and violent geological fury. We have watched the very rhythm of our world break apart, the steady 24-hour metronome of our lives shattering into the frantic, dizzying spin of a 6-hour day, plunging ecosystems into a relentless cycle of blinding light and abyssal dark. We saw our planet's axis, that steady celestial gyroscope that gives us our seasons, begin a slow, inexorable, and terrifying wobble. The gentle predictability of summer, autumn, winter, and spring, the very foundation of agriculture and civilization, became a forgotten memory, replaced by an age of climatic chaos. Poles melted while equators froze, and deserts were drowned in epical deluges. Through it all we saw life, tenacious and stubborn, cling on at the precipice of annihilation. We saw the evolutionary arms race accelerate, a desperate scramble to adapt to a world that no longer played by any recognizable rules. The night, once illuminated by that gentle second-hand sunlight, was now a black, suffocating void, a primal darkness that rewrote the behavior of every nocturnal creature on the planet. Our journey was not just one of planetary science, it was one of profound loss. We have stood in the silent heart of this imagined future, staring up at a sky that feels unnervingly empty, a cosmic canvas scrubbed clean of its most prominent masterpiece. The songs, the myths, the religions, the calendars, the dreams of lovers and the ambitions of explorers, all born from the simple act of looking up, all rendered meaningless, their inspiration a phantom. What we have truly witnessed is the deconstruction of a world, the removal of a single vital component from a machine of impossible complexity, only to watch the entire apparatus grind itself to dust. And in that dust, we find the most fundamental lesson of all, that the Earth is not an island. It is not a solitary actor on the cosmic stage. Our planet is one half of a breathtakingly intricate partnership, a gravitational and evolutionary dance that has been unfolding for more than 4 billion years. The Moon is not merely a decorative bauble in our sky. It is woven into the very fabric of our being, its presence etched into the tides of our oceans, the tilt of our world, the length of our day, the stability of our climate, and perhaps even the very spark that allowed complex life to gain a foothold. This phantom limb we've explored, this ache in the sky, reveals the true nature of our existence as a cosmic duet. For eons, we saw ourselves as singular, a blue marble floating in the void. But this exercise forces us to confront a deeper truth. We live in a binary system. The Earth-Moon system is the unit of life, the complete engine of stability. The Moon has been our shield, absorbing countless impacts that might otherwise have sterilized the planet. It has been our anchor, holding our axial tilt in a gentle, life-sustaining embrace, preventing the wild, catastrophic swings that plague a solitary world like Mars. It has been our chronometer, slowing Earth's frantic primordial spin, lengthening the day from a chaotic few hours to the steady, life-giving 24 we know. It has been our planet's physical therapist, its gravitational pull constantly kneading and massaging the Earth's molten interior. perhaps playing a crucial role in sustaining the magnetic field that protects our atmosphere from being stripped away by the solar wind. Every breath you take is in some small but measurable way a gift from the moon. Its influence is not a footnote in Earth's history, it is the headline. To remove it is to tear out the heart of the system and expect the body to live on. This journey into darkness illuminates the staggering fragility of our planetary home. We are accustomed to thinking of Earth as robust, permanent, a bastion of stability in a violent cosmos. But its stability, we now see, is a delicate and contingent thing, a temporary truce negotiated between titanic forces. It is a finely tuned instrument, and the moon is its primary tuning fork. Our world exists on a knife's edge, in a sliver of cosmic real estate where the conditions for complex life are just right. This is the famous habitable zone, the Goldilocks region around a star where water can exist as a liquid. For decades, this was the primary target in our search for other Earths. We looked for planets of the right size at the right distance from the right kind of star, but our thought experiment has added a devastatingly restrictive new filter to that search. It whispers a chilling possibility that a rocky world in the habitable zone is not enough. Perhaps it's not even close to enough. The true cradle of life may not be a single planet, but a planet in partnership with a massive stabilizing moon. A moon large enough to act as a gravitational gyroscope, locking its planet's axis and preventing it from tumbling through chaotic seasonal extremes. A moon massive enough to raise significant tides, creating the dynamic, nutrient-rich intertidal zones, where many scientists believe life's precursor chemistry got its start. A moon born from a colossal impact, one that might have also delivered the volatile elements and water that made the planet habitable in the first place. Suddenly, the odds of finding another Earth seem to plummet. The cosmic lottery we thought we had won now seems impossibly more complex. How many planets are out there, orbiting within their star's habitable zone, but doomed to be barren because they lack a celestial partner? How many worlds are like a moonless Mars, tumbling through calamitous ice ages and scorching heat waves over millions of years, never able to maintain the stability needed for complex life to evolve beyond microbes? How many are like a moonless Venus, perhaps never having its spin slowed, remaining a tempestuous, super-rotating hothouse? Our journey without the moon forces us to refine our search, to look not just for lonely planets, but for systems. We must now hunt for the glint of exomoons orbiting distant exoplanets, a task of almost unimaginable technical difficulty. We are searching for a faint wobble in a planet's orbit, or the minuscule dip in starlight as a moon passes in front of its planet, which is itself already a minuscule dip in light passing in front of its star. It is like trying to spot a flea on the back of a firefly from 1,000 miles away. Yet, we are beginning to try. Telescopes, both on the ground and in space, are being designed with this very challenge in mind. We're analysing the subtle variations in transit timing, looking for the gravitational tug of a hidden companion, the ghost in the machine that signals a stable, partnered world. Because if this scenario has taught us anything, it is that the presence of a large moon may be the single most important biomarker we are not yet equipped to find. It might be the great filter, the rare ingredient that separates the living worlds from the dead. The universe could be teeming with rocky planets in habitable zones, a gallery of failed Earths, each one a silent testament to the importance of a companion they never had. This realization brings with it a profound sense of cosmic loneliness, but also a renewed appreciation for our own astonishing fortune. We are the children of a cosmic collision, the beneficiaries of a 4 billion-year-old partnership. Our existence is a testament to the power of connection, of a delicate gravitational embrace that transformed a chaotic rock into a vibrant, living, breathing world. The moon, that silent sentinel, has been our constant companion, our protector, our pacemaker, and our muse. It is the anchor that moors us to stability, the engine that stirs our oceans, the poet that inspires our dreams. It is the other half of our world's soul. This entire journey has been an act of imagination, a fiction built on the laws of physics. But its purpose is to reveal a truth more profound than any fact or figure. The truth is that we are impossibly, miraculously lucky We live in a moment of celestial grace, a delicate equilibrium that we have always taken for granted. Tonight, when darkness falls, step outside. Look up at the sky, but see it now with new eyes. Do not just see a familiar light, a disk of pale rock. See it for what it truly is. See the gravitational shield that has guarded your ancestors for 1 billion years. See the celestial engine that drives the pulse of your oceans. See the gyroscope that holds your world steady on its course, giving you the predictable rhythm of the seasons that allowed your civilization to flourish. See the cosmic accident that made you possible. See the clock that measured out the days of the dinosaurs, and the calendar that hangs upon your wall. See the silent, steadfast partner that has danced with our planet across the unfathomable depths of time. You are standing on one of the luckiest worlds in the known universe, and its luck, and yours, is hanging right there in the quiet majesty of the night sky. The greatest lesson from a world without a moon is the overwhelming, heart-stopping gratitude we should feel for the one we have.